I know everyone was waiting for me to make a video on the fall of Syria, but this video by RedPaganNikole is just far too good not to repost. I highly recommend that you go to her channel, click on the links, watch the original video, and show her some serious support. Thank you for watching.
So I'd like to address the liberals, first worldists, and the Western chauvinists and imperialists out there, as there seems to be some sort of discourse going on online that us on the far left are on some cope because of the fall of Assad. This is just simply not the case. What we simply understand is something that y'all don't seem to know or just seem to refuse to acknowledge, and that being that Assad was the gatekeeper holding the wolves back, just like Gaddafi did in Libya and Saddam did in Iraq. And were these men by any means the best solution to the problem? Were they probably the most democratic? No, of course not. But they were still the strong leaders that the country needed during those times. And frankly, it's better than the absolute chaos and potentially having some weak government or leadership fall to some right wing Islamist regime. It's better than having them being enslaved to the Western imperialist cult under the guise of a democratic system. It's not that we support dictators. We support strong leaders and strong governments that are willing to fight back against these forces. Marxists are realists who understand the world far better than most of you do, and the material conditions in which facilitate global power and class struggle. Third worldists know this best, as we understand that the first world is often used as a pawn amongst the Western and social imperialists, each of them striving to exert their influence, their socio-political and socio-economic power, and frankly, dominance over them. We support the struggle of these nations and peoples against those powers, and that was what Assad and his allies, including the Syrian communists, represented. The Syrian opposition, which is just frankly a ragtag group of Western backed and funded militias, a ragtag group of miscreants who didn't have really any cohesion at all, and all of a sudden, suddenly after 13 years, they just power through everything in one massive offensive and just completely take over the country. No, I don't buy that. In fact, the Syrian opposition is represented by Western imperialism and, frankly, Zionism. The fact that Assad fell was not just because of some fresh new offensive by these miscreants. It was facilitated by the Zionist invasion of Syria just a few weeks ago, and frankly by its Western allies, the Zionists' Western allies, who, for the most part did just kind of sit back and just kind of let it happen, but let's not pretend that they weren't funding and supplying these assholes for years. Oh, and some of those weapons and funds uh, ended up falling into the hands of Islamic extremists like ISIS and Al Nusra Front, by the way, who carried out several of the chemical attacks that Assad got blamed for. So let's just kind of but we'll tackle that at another time. But this is the great con of Western liberals. They support all of this. They only see that veneer, the toppling of a totalitarian dictator. which, by the way, Assad is not. Please learn what terms are, please.
You keep using the word. I do not think it means what you think it means.
They don't see the material conditions that face these people or the consequences of certain actions or actors. They don't see it because, frankly, they don't care. Because they, like the governments that supposedly that they don't care for, are complicit in wanting to spread Western values to countries and people who have long since fought against it, fought hard against it. This is because the material conditions in which we are accustomed to here in the West, in the first world, aren't necessarily or don't necessarily translate and or are suited or even compatible in some ways with the material conditions that exist in these countries, in the second, the third, and even fourth world nations, specifically even in the fourth world nations. And why would they? Because they aren't on the same level as the first world nations are. So of course they wouldn't. They don't have that same level of privilege and immense wealth that, frankly, the first world nations covet and hoard. Nor will they ever be. And that's kind of the point. These first world nations want the second, the third, and the fourth world to be the good little drones, the good ally, and to do the bidding of the West, to do the bidding of the West in the regions that these countries represent. And if they don't have that resource, they're going to try to facilitate it by whatever means are necessary, by funding rebel groups, arming militias, or just outright doing what they did in Iraq and Afghanistan and invading the countries, and then, 20 years later pull out, and then, everything just falls back to the same shit that was there before. But I digress. So this often leads to corruption and autocratic governments themselves being led by Western-backed tyrants who continue to do business with the West until there comes a time where eventually they outlive their own usefulness and then are toppled for the next puppet that they can install, or the next, puppet democracy or whatever it is that they, claim. Anyways. So these liberals who sit there that mock us Marxists for coping with the fall of Assad and accusing us of supporting dictators and tyrants or fascists even, why not look in the mirror at the monsters throughout history that the United States, Britain, France, and even Germany have supported and even to this day continue to support? Keep in mind, September 11th of 1973, there was a man by the name of Salvador Allende who was a democratically elected left-wing leader. He was then toppled immediately by the CIA, who backed a right-wing psychopathic dictator named Augusto Pinochet. Remember that? No, some of you probably are too young to remember. I know I certainly am, but I actually read a book once in a while. But yeah, people like Pinochet, Batista, Franco, Netanyahu, all of them homicidal, and some, in Netanyahu's case, genocidal, narcissistic maniacs who the U.S. and its allies not only supported, but in many cases are still on some serious copium themselves to this day, when those men that they supported fall from power to the ones that they once oppressed. So don't sit there and try to play the moral high ground with us liberals, because we see right through that. And while it's not relevant to the topic per se, how are you liberals doing with that copium of losing the election?
Damn!
Are you ready to admit that Kamala Harris was just a shitty candidate who should have listened to those calling for an arms embargo against the Zionists?
Fun fact, no.
No? Okay then. You people have no integrity, no credibility at all anymore. Not that you really had much to begin with. You're all a bunch of hypocrites. So before you go accusing us on the left of being on some cope, look in the goddamn mirror. Pick up a damn book and actually learn something. Get your heads out of your ass instead of calling us tankies and theory nerds or making excuses for your lack of understanding of the world.
Your music's bad and you should feel bad.
People like Abigail Richards and the nominal Naomi community, you know, that group of fucking shitlibs who blocked me for trying to impart some wisdom to them by posting my videos in their community, only for it to be my videos to be, you know, essentially removed every single time. And then having the audacity to claim that it wasn't politically motivated while admitting that they removed tanky content. So essentially admitting that it was politically motivated.
Boo!
These pretentious and hypocritical assholes don't want to hear the truth, and they instead continue to spread their misinformation and their lies about situations that they don't even know the slightest bit about. And it is just this delusional, narcissistic, and sociopathic behavior that loses them elections.
You know why people don't like liberals? Because they lose. If liberals are so fucking smart, how come they lose so goddamn always?
It is what makes them no different than the fascists they claim to fight. But most importantly, it just continues to prove us tankies right in the end.
Children, you know I rarely say this, but, well, fuck you. Simultaneous you and me, and you. Simultaneous loving, baby.
I'm RedPaganNikole, and this has been Red Pagan Corner. Until next time. Thank you for watching. If you like news and politics from a leftist perspective, true crime, or informational videos on leftist philosophy and pagan belief practices, and would like to support the channel, please head over to my Patreon page and set up a monthly donation. Even a few bucks really helps me out. All links are provided in the description. Like, comment, and subscribe, and share on various social media. Hit the notification bell so that you never miss a video. I put out content regularly, so you will always get quite a bang for your buck.